In this episode, I speak with Aissatou. She's a first-time mother that knew having her baby free of the medical system was the best option. Aissatou started her journey of self-reclamation in 2019 when she and her partner removed her IUD, just the two of them, in the comfort of their home. A few years later, when finding out she was pregnant, Aissatou began down the path of self-acceptance and being okay with who she was and where she was going within this new place of life. She connected and listened to her intuition throughout her pregnancy and made the conscious choice to be as stress-free as possible. Taking her prenatal care into her own hands, Aissatou used movement, baking, and psychedelic mushrooms to guide her in an easeful way from pregnancy to her birthing time. This is a very simple and easy story of a first-time mother who trusted in herself and had the loving support of a partner to navigate an experience that is, in the mainstream, regarded as highly dangerous and a medical event. Aissatou is a beautiful example of how pregnancy and birth doesn't need to be complicated, and when following your wants and needs, everything can just be as it is. And once again, I want to say that submissions are always open for you to speak within this movement. If you are an Indigenous woman or a woman of color and have wanted to share your birth story on a platform that celebrates you for who you are and the birth choices you've made, please reach out to me or fill out the submission form at primalwomanportal.com/movement. It only takes a few minutes, and I'm always looking for mothers to share their birth stories or women who are working within the field of the female continuum to share their work. All information can be found within the show notes below. Hello, Aissatou. Welcome to the Free Birthing in Color movement. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited. I'm always excited when I speak to mothers, especially mothers that have their first children and go straight into birthing outside of the medical system. I think these stories are so great and need to be shared because, it's not, your birth of your baby is not meant to be a test run. You should birth the way that you want to birth in your power the very first time. So hearing first-time mothers talk about their journeys into birthing free of the system always just lights my heart up. So yeah, I'm very grateful that you're here to share your experience.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I honestly wish that this had existed while I was pregnant for the first time so that I could listen, but I appreciate it because I know going into the next round, I have a lot of stories to tap into.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I'm making this, because it was something that was lacking in this kind of community and it needs to be shared. And so let's get into it. And the first question I would love to ask you is, what is your ancestry and your lineage that you're passing on to your children?
So on my mom's side, I am second generation American. My grandma is from Sierra Leone. Um, and so my family, they are Fulani, the Fula people, Fula tribe. So they're from Sierra Leone by way of Guinea. And their tribe is known for being nomads, which is something that is very true for me. And then on my dad's side, I'm first generation born in the US. My dad was born in the US Virgin Islands in St. Croix, and his family's from Jamaica.
Wow. Okay. I love that. I love how you know that little bit of information about the tribe that your family grew up in. Because that gets lost, with the generations, especially when people either migrated or were kind of forced into, the Americas or into a different settlement from where they're used to. So it's really beautiful that you have that information. And they're nomadic people, and that fits into how you resonate with them and in your lifestyle. So I always find that so fascinating. So thank you for sharing that. And so question
Thanks for
number,
asking.
yeah, no worries. And question number 2 is, where does your motherhood journey begin?
I would say at a subconscious level, it probably began, I think it was around 2019. Before that, when I was in college, I had a Mirena IUD implanted. And in 2019, that's when I decided to have it taken out. And instead of getting it taken out at the doctor's office. I had just come into all this knowledge about our bodies and just the way that is the best way to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually had it removed at home. My
Mm-hmm.
partner, who's the one my baby is with as well,
Mm-hmm.
he we like bought some tools that we needed and like set the candles down. And he helped me remove my IUD. So I'd say that looking back, that was where it started because it was a lot of my motherhood journey has been about like taking responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for my body, for myself, for how I feel, really tapping into myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that that was like one of the most, that was the pivotal moment. And looking back, I didn't really see everything that would come out of it
Mm-hmm.
um, while I was doing it at that time. But that is really what set everything off and kind of changed the relationship that I had with my body. And even just now, through the act of taking it out, it's like now I'm open to becoming pregnant, even though it didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen until years after. It's just before it was something that I never really thought about because it was literally like I have
Mm-hmm.
something blocking that. That's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
now I had to be conscious about how
Mm-hmm.
I was moving. So I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, it forced me to have a lot more thought into the my body and yeah, just everything like that.
I think that's beautiful. I've heard of um, quite a few women that, do that. They either get their partner to, or women that are friends or in their community to take out their IUDs for them. And it
Mm-hmm.
really does just bring that reclamation back into like, I'm taking my power back to my body now. It's not being given to the hands of medical providers. It's me
Mm-hmm.
doing it. And then, like you said, you had to be more conscious for once the IUD is out to whether, you wanted to get pregnant or whether you didn't want to get pregnant. And it is that
Mm-hmm.
really, really beautiful step into understanding and knowing yourself more. So thank you. That's really great that you shared that because it's a really big piece in this whole journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then, after having the IUD out and leading into getting pregnant, like, was this a conscious conception journey? Had you and your partner been planning this for a while? Do you want to get into like what that pre-conception and pregnancy looked like for you?
Mm-hmm. So this was definitely not conscious. But it's funny because we look back and I literally have videos of us like the month before I was pregnant being like, isn't it crazy that we're somebody's parents? Like, so it was definitely on our subconscious mind happening.
Hmm.
And we voiced it some times, but we didn't realize though that like we're about to be somebody's parents like very soon and then in this
Hmm.
year.
Hmm.
Um, so it definitely wasn't conscious on a planned on a conscious level.
Hmm.
Um, but when it happened, it was interesting because I know the exact day that it happened.
Hmm.
I noticed 2 weeks after, I noticed that the smell of my pee had changed. So I was like, this
Hmm.
this is different. Like something is different.
Hmm.
And then it was like another like a week or two of just waiting until my period was supposed to come and then not coming. So I remember like just feeling chaos at that time because it's the unknown of like, is it like, am I pregnant? Am I not? And I never thought about taking a pregnancy test. I just knew that like I'm going to find out when I find out, and if my period's not coming because I know it's regular, like
Hmm.
it has happened. So
Hmm.
yeah, I feel like that threw me just into. I feel like it felt very chaotic,
Okay.
and it was like even the first trimester. I feel like there was just a lot of turmoil inside of just like now really being faced with the fact like I'm going to be a mother
Hmm.
because even though it was an idea that was always around, I feel like I was always ready to push it off as to like, when I have done this or I've accomplished this or I have
Hmm.
that or I feel like this, then that'll be the time. But I
Mm-hmm.
could eternally say that forever and ever. So it was just like the recognition of like, now is the time. It's
Mm-hmm.
happening now, and just dealing with everything that it brought up inside of me.
Wow, okay. And how did your partner feel about you? Because I'm assuming then you had like a wild pregnancy free of the medical system. So
Mm-mm.
was that something that you spoke to your partner about, or was he totally just on board and like, yeah, totally, let's do this? Or did he have kind of questions, concerns?
Mm. He was totally on board. It's even funny because like maybe 3 years before this,
Hmm.
I had never really thought about like how am I going to give birth, but he
Hmm.
had shown me I think it's called like the business of being born.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, yeah, that documentary, and like he just randomly showed it to me one day, and
Hmm.
that then from that moment on, it made me want to have a home birth at least. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that um, just in the time leading up, I ended up, because at the time I was alkaline vegan.
Hmm.
So a lot of people in that community also are in the free birth community and just like um, around health, taking care of themselves outside of the medical system.
Hmm.
So at that time too, I was exposed to a lot of whether it's just home births or free births,
Hmm.
seeing a lot of people who have done it. So it was something that we both knew about.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I feel like it was never anything like a big deal or anything. It was just like
Hmm.
whatever you feel comfortable with,
Yeah.
that's the most important. So that's what we're going to do.
Cool. Oh, I love that. So do you want to kind of get into a little bit of that pregnancy journey? Like, how did it,
Mm.
were you really connected to your intuition? Like, how did you do anything like go and, I don't know, get chiropractic appointments or massages to take care of your body? Like, what was your kind of quote
Mm.
unquote prenatal care like as you were journeying through that?
Yeah, I feel like so at the time when I first was pregnant, we were living in Gambia.
Mm.
Then we moved to Kenya. Then we moved to South Africa. So during my
Oh, wow.
pregnancy, we were in three different countries where, in all of these, we didn't know anyone and we didn't have any family. So that um, kind of shapes the way that I went about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, my prenatal care, honestly, the biggest thing was being nice to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a lot about of like self acceptance of
Yeah.
like before this I was always focused on like I have to heal. There's this thing like whether it's mentally, spiritually, or like physically, I was always focused on healing, being a better version of myself. And I feel like a lot of my pregnancy was about being okay with who I am, with where I am, because um, that is how I was able to keep like stress levels in check, which is something that I had been concerned about just because my mom in her pregnancies, she was always extremely stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always like life or death C-section type of hospital scenario. So I,
Mm.
because of that information, my main focus was like, how do I be stress free? And
Mm.
then on top of that, just I had already been like moving my body as much as I had ever in my life in a healthy way. So I had been doing yoga before this. I loved when I was pregnant. It's funny, before I knew I was pregnant, I
Mm.
started doing prenatal yoga
Oh, wow.
because I just love it. Felt like um, the only time in yoga that I would see like the focus on just loving your body and loving yourself, because I feel like a lot of yoga is focused on like makes you feel like I'm not flexible enough or I'm not fit enough. But
Mm.
prenatal yoga was very much like love yourself, love your body. So I continued that. I really loved it's called Khalsa Way Kundalini yoga. It
Mhm.
was like my grounding practice that I did.
Mm-hmm.
like at least every other day.
Mm-hmm.
And besides that, just kind of eating well.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant for me, like, both like keeping terms of health, like, am I getting enough greens and iron and things like that? Having lots of fresh juices, but it also meant like eating things that brought me comfort. Like I would crave foods that my dad had made when I was younger or my mom had made when I was younger. It was funny because I ended up craving just a lot of American foods from childhood. So
Mm-hmm.
and I used to really love to bake. So especially like last in the second trimester, early third trimester, I was just in a baking uh frenzy. So just a lot of that, and then just staying in tune with myself, which I feel like the yoga helped a lot. I feel like I'm always very self-aware, and I'm aware a lot of the things that I need to work on. Like if I feel nervous about something, digging deep into it and being like, what is the source of this nervousness? So a lot of that work I just continued. So it's kind of a continuation of things that I had already been doing. And I felt lucky because I had already like been consistent with this work before I got pregnant. And it was like the first time in my life that I had been consistent with it for a while. So it was nice to just be able to keep on keep on doing it.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that because yeah, you just were able to be in your body and pregnant and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, keeping it very stress free, which if you were within a medical model it wouldn't be stress free. You got to
Mm-hmm.
connect to yourself, you got to listen to yourself. So yeah, that's just so beautiful and so simple. You were just a pregnant
Mm-hmm.
woman growing a baby, eating healthy, eating the comfort foods that you wanted, moving your body and just doing the things that felt good for you at those times. And
Mm-hmm.
that's yeah, it's just so simple. Like pregnancy can be so simple when you look
Simple.
at it that way. So, wow, yeah, that's amazing. Um, yeah, do you want to get into like the end stages of pregnancy and leading up to
Mm.
your birth?
Yeah, I'd say so. One exactly to the day, 1 month before I gave birth. So I had a relationship with psychedelic mushrooms before I was pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
and there were two times while I was pregnant that I felt called to do them again. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had taken a journey exactly 1 month before my birth. I ended up giving birth,
Mm-hmm.
and during that journey, I basically was like moaning and yelling and vocalizing a lot for
Mm-hmm.
like probably a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because it then comes up in my um, birth and labor.
Mm-hmm.
So I like on the 38 weeks exactly to the day, that's when I woke up. I had the day before, I had gotten everything that I had wanted in the mail, like the tinctures and stuff, and all the
Mm-hmm.
supplies that I had wanted just to be prepared for any what if situations. Um, and so I remember I woke up at like 8 o'clock and I was just like, I'm tired. And I was like, I should go lay down and visualize giving birth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I had heard a lot to do, like visualize giving birth. But because I had never given birth, I found it extremely difficult to
Okay.
do, to
Mm-hmm.
visualize the process. So I found myself instead a lot of the times focusing on like the end result, like how do I want to celebrate once I've given birth, that type of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I go back to lay down. I don't visualize, I just go back to sleep. And then I wake up about an hour later. I go to the kitchen and I feel a sensation that I had never felt before. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and because it was my first time, I was like, expecting like, I don't know, like how people are like, oh, sometimes you'll have practice labor, like you might feel contractions or Braxton Hicks, whatever, and you might go into labor like a week or two later. It doesn't really mean anything. So
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten in my head that like even if I start feeling contractions, like I don't need to stress because it's going to be a long, I still have a long road ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I felt that first contraction, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, these things are serious. Like, this this is some serious work."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then a few minutes later, I had another one. A few minutes later, I had another one, and I went over to my yoga ball, and I remember my partner. He was like, "You should time these." So I downloaded the like a timer app on my phone, and they started being like within like 10 minutes of me waking up, they were within 3 minutes of each other. So
Wow.
yeah, so I woke up and it was go time
No
essentially.
kidding.
And so yeah. So first I tried to find comfort on the ball. It didn't really uh, do anything for me at the time. So I asked him to run me a bath.
Mm-hmm.
Got in the water. The contractions were getting more and more intense.
Mm-hmm.
So I got in the water for a bit. Then during my time in the water, I remember I
Oh,
started
thank you.
during my time in the water, I remember I started feeling a sensation to push.
Oh,
So
wow.
I started pushing a little bit while I was in the water. But I, even when I was pregnant, I didn't really enjoy being in the water too much.
Okay.
So I only stayed in there for a little bit because it didn't really, um, I think the sensations I were feeling were just so strong. A lot of it was in my, um, basically all of it was in my lower back. That's
Mm-hmm.
where everything that I felt was, it was basically like just tightness radiating from my lower back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I didn't really find that much comfort in the water. And I always felt weird, like the buoyancy of like floating,
Okay.
feeling like I wasn't really in,
Mm-hmm.
like feeling like I was getting pushed out. So the day before I went into labor, me and my partner, we had practice because I had just wanted to know in the house, like, where do I want to give birth? Where
Mm-hmm.
would I probably like practice and move around? What are the things? So I asked him to lay out an area where I had thought like, okay, I'll probably want to give birth like on the floor on some
Mm-hmm.
cushions that are covered with some like garbage bags and the shoe
Mm-hmm.
pad stuff.
Yeah.
So he set up the area for me, and I went over there and I went on the bed, and he also played like a playlist that I had made of just like two songs that I had used a lot when I played a lot, like when I would gratitude journal.
Mm.
So they helped me to just like, and I associated them a lot with like being in meditative state. So
Okay.
they
Yeah.
helped to calm me. And
Mm.
then I think like YouTube algorithm just started going into like guttural chants,
Okay.
which is exactly what I needed at the time because basically it started to get just the sensations were so intense that I just found I thought I would end up moving a lot, but I
Mm-hmm.
found that I ended up laying on the side um, and just saying like open, 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 like really loudly. uh, like going along with the music, being like
Mm-hmm.
the only way out is through,
Yeah.
only way out is through, because I had to just talk myself um, through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And just a lot of vocalization, which going back to the mushroom experience that I had had a month earlier, I feel like because of that experience, I was much more just able to tap into the side of just yelling, letting it out, being
Yeah.
loud, being
Mm-hmm.
as loud as I needed to be without thinking of like, what are the neighbors going to think or whatever, just being loud.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was my primary pain relief, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't necessarily relieve it, it just helped me be able to go through it.
Right.
And I think a lot of it too was because of my experience with mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very in tune with being able to let go and
Okay.
like to let go of stress, because it's like if you take mushrooms at a higher dose and you are trying to hold on to reality or hold on to what you think should happen,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you have a more negative experience.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was so focused on having a positive experience at these times, it's the same energy that I had to tap into to just like let go, release, know that what's going to happen is going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm good, and that like we're just gonna ride this out. So
Mm-hmm. I love
this
that.
so this is where my sense of time really even just, and even my memory now looking back, like uh it's just kind of, I went somewhere. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how long I was there for, but I went somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point I come back and I'm asking my partner to hold up my leg. I'm laying sideways and I
Mm-hmm.
have him hold up my leg. And basically, I remember going somewhere in my head and then coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brought me back was like a giant urge to push. So
Okay.
I push, and that's when uh, I remember feeling like I can't do, like in my
Mm-hmm.
head, I was like, I cannot. Like, oh, we have hit a point where I cannot go any further. And I remember, like, in every single book reading, that they're like, at the point where you're like, I can't do this anymore, that's when the baby is about to be here. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember, like, just feeling like I was being honestly ripped from the inside. Um, and like, I could feel my clitoris like moving and expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then my partner goes, "Oh, I see the head." And I remember laughing, um, because I was like, it's funny because I went from being in so much pain
Mm-hmm.
to then having this piece of information and laughing because I knew, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like the hard part is basically over. So then I went, once he could see the head, I went on all fours because I had wanted him to catch the baby.
Mm-hmm.
But once I went on all fours, he just slipped out so quickly that he just fell on top of the cushions. And I remember just like it's like the few seconds where you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe it's over, and
Mm-hmm.
that I just did this, and now there's a child that's here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that was the, then after that, just holding him
Mm-hmm.
for some time. This too, it's interesting. My memory gets a little wonky here too, because this is what I learned about myself, is that I don't know how to rest and sit down.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just sitting and chilling and relaxing into the moment, I had felt conscious of the amount of blood that I had lost. And
Okay.
so I was like, okay, I want to get my placenta out
Mm-hmm.
so that I can then take shepherd's purse to stop this bleeding. And especially because my mom, through her births, has a history of hemorrhage. So I feel like that was always in the back of my mind.
Okay, yeah.
Um, so I have the baby onto me. I'm not sure how long, maybe like 20, 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we all move to the bathroom on so I can sit on the toilet and try to birth the placenta. My partner's holding the baby while I'm on the toilet, and I birth the placenta maybe
Mm-hmm.
like 45 minutes after.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was feeling faint and lightheaded. And so I had taken shepherd's purse. I had laid my feet up,
Mm-hmm.
but I was still feeling faint. And I also was not like sitting. Like I just, for some reason, kept being like, let me stand up, let me stand up.
Okay, yeah.
Um, and I ended up fainting.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I had read the placenta, the forgotten chakra,
Mhm.
I remember the whole section where she talks about like, yeah, if you eat a part of your placenta, that's as effective as taking Pitocin for stopping hemorrhaging. And
Mm.
I, when I had gotten that piece of information, I told my partner this. And so when he saw me being faint, he was like, you should eat some of your placenta. So
Mhm.
he brought me some honey, dipped it in, and, or he even tore the pieces off for me and dipped it in. And so I ended up eating like at least like 3, 4 pieces that were this big.
Wow, okay.
And that's what like
Mhm.
brought me, gave me strength. That's what got me back,
Mhm.
which I really appreciated because it's like, I feel like I learned so much in that, like, A, I need to know when to sit down and ask for help.
Mhm.
B, even when I'm stubborn and don't know how to sit down and ask
Mhm.
for help, I have someone who knows me well enough
Mhm.
and pays attention to the things that I share that he knows, like, okay, like she needs this.
Mhm.
Um, so those are even lessons that I take forward into motherhood with me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel like just so happy getting to have eaten my placenta because I feel like it just showed me that in the whole birth, like just you have what you need. You have
Mhm.
exactly what you need. Like even though I had gotten all these other things, it's like
Mhm.
it's so simple as just like eating my placenta and sitting down and
Mhm.
letting myself rest and just like relax into the moment of everything that I just did. So
Mhm.
that then after that, basically after I had my placenta, just laid in bed, ordered some food,
Mm.
rested, and we kept baby on his attached to the cord attached for 3 days. Then
Mhm.
it just got a little so short and dry that it was a little too hard to maneuver for us. So we ended up cutting it after
Yeah.
3 days. But that was really nice. And it was really cool to even just look at my placenta afterwards because
Mhm.
I was like how it's like the only piece of meat that you can get that's like born out of life and not out of
Yes.
death.
Yes.
So just like seeing it and eventually like I first put it in the freezer eventually before we left I planted it in the backyard of the house that we were staying at
Mhm.
um and yeah then I guess I could go into like my early postpartum.
Mhm. Yeah, please.
So because we were not near family,
Mhm.
the blessing in that like was that it was just the two of us and now
Mhm.
the three of us. So
Mhm.
we just could be together. Like literally all I did for the first like 40, 60 days was
Mhm.
just like rest, be
Mhm.
at home, walk around in the garden in the back,
Mhm.
breastfeed. My partner, he was working from home, which meant though that he was there all the time. So
Mhm.
all the meals he was cooking, everything he was taking care of, like I just got to rest and like he was on overdrive, but I just
Mhm.
relax and just like sink into this new feeling of motherhood.
Yeah.
And at this time, we had been away from our family for 3 years through traveling.
Mhm.
And so my mom, she flew to South Africa just for 5 days, like
Mhm.
once the baby was about 2 months old, to
Okay.
come see us. And with my little sister as well, they
Oh.
came met the baby. It was really nice. And then after 3 months, we left South Africa. And I, through pregnancy and through birth, I just felt called to be near family,
Mhm.
um, which is like, to be honest, not really how I am,
Okay.
which is why we haven't seen people in so long. But I
Mhm.
really felt like this is of crucial importance for him to meet everybody, for us, everyone to see us as parents.
Mhm.
So we kind of went on like a family tour after that, like So the first 3 months we basically had to ourselves, and the next 3 months we had with family. And
Oh.
honestly, that's like my dream, because it was like I
Mhm.
got enough time to really know and meet my baby. And
Yeah.
then when I really needed some help and assistance, like that's
Mhm.
by the time we were at family. So it was just a little easier with having people being able to look after him for,
Mhm.
even if it's just 30 minutes or an hour, since we're
Mhm.
still breastfeeding. So that was like a dream. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Wow. And how was your breastfeeding journey from the beginning? Did you just like kind of naturally fall into it, or was there a bit of difficulty, or it was just smooth sailing from the start?
There was definitely some difficulty. I feel
Okay.
like he always got milk,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more like it would be off and on. Like it was like at the beginning, my nipples were getting used to it, so
Mm-hmm.
they would be sore, and I had like the little silverettes
Yeah.
on
Mm-hmm.
to help. And then I'd say like for the first like 3 to 4 weeks, they were really sore. And then
Mm-hmm.
they'd stop being sore for a while, but then it would come back. So I feel
Okay.
like the first 3 months, it was like a cycle of like, I'm good. And then like, oh, my nipples are hurting again. Oh, okay. Now I'm good. So it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
back and forth, because when it would hurt, it would like, there were some days I remember that it was just like
Mm,
really
yeah.
really painful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but somehow it just, I think because I always knew that the pain would go away,
Mm-hmm.
that I just was like, you know what, I'm just gonna ride the waves of this. And now, like, it's everything's good. Even now, he has his four little teeth,
Mm-hmm.
and it hasn't. I was like, oh, it's gonna bite me. But it's definitely been a lot more pleasant than I had
Mm.
expected. So I feel like even I had forgotten, like, oh yeah, in the beginning, like uh it was tough. And I remember, it's interesting because I feel like my whole birth journey, pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, I feel like before this I was really judgmental of people and how they decided to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like because of just my experiences,
Mm-hmm.
I now know that like the difficulties that
Mm-hmm.
can arise in each chapter. And so
Mm-hmm.
I see like, I feel like I have more understanding and love towards
Mm-hmm.
like all moms, all motherhood journeys, because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I could see why like if I'm having pain breastfeeding and somebody says, here, take this, if
Mm-hmm.
like I don't like, if I don't have values that align a certain way, I could
Mm-hmm.
see why it's like, oh yeah, obviously I'll just do this.
Yeah.
So I feel like I learned a lot, especially when that first contraction hit. I was like, oh, oh,
Yeah.
this is why I
Mm-hmm.
see people get pain relief, because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and oh yeah, my whole birth, it was very fast. It was like 3.5 hours. So
Whoa, that is
yeah,
fast. For a first time mom, that's very
yeah.
fast.
I thought, I was like, it's gonna take some time, which I think also helped me to go to another place, because in my mind I was like, "Ooh, this is very intense, and I might be in this for like 8 hours." Like,
Mm.
so I have to figure out how to ride through this, because frankly, I don't know how long it's going to be. So I
Mm-hmm.
think thinking that it was going to be a lot longer than it was helped me a lot, because
Mm-hmm.
it was like, hey, this is what the experience is. So
Yeah,
you gotta use what you know and just go through it.
totally. Wow. Yeah, that's such an amazing story. I love the fact that you used the mushrooms as medicine and used that to journey in your pregnancy experience, and how it doing that journey while you were pregnant also was able to aid you while you were giving birth.
Mm.
I have another woman that I interviewed for this podcast who also has a relationship with mushrooms, and she did a
Mm,
few journeys in her pregnancy as well, and she said it greatly helped her while she was birthing her babies. So I think that's beautiful. And I love hearing that women, it's normal. This is a normal thing to use the plant medicine, even if it is psychedelic medicine. It's not like you're
mm,
going on these like hero dose journeys where you're completely out of your mind. You're using this as a
mm,
tool to allow you to be more grounded in your birth experience and to be a way shower of bringing your baby into this world. So I'm really
mhm,
grateful that you spoke to that piece, because more women need to hear about that, I think. And it needs to become more okay, and it's not taboo and like,
mm,
oh no, she's done mushrooms while she was pregnant, that's so bad.
mhm,
It should be, wow, she did mushrooms, what a great service that she did for herself and for her child. um
mhm,
and yeah, like I said, a 3 hour experience, a 3 hour birth experience, that's very fast for a first time mother. And so I'm just like, kudos to you. You did it. And like, even that in and of itself is an experience, just as a woman
mhm,
being in her birth process for 3 days is,
mhm,
an
mhm.
experience in and of itself. So yeah, it's I love, that's why I love hearing these stories and speaking with women, because all the stories are so different. And like you said, it was so humbling for you to go through that. And yeah, it just lights me up all the time.
I feel like I just love birth as well, and just
Mhm.
talking about birth because it's like it just reminds me of how strong we all are. That
Mhm.
even if people choose to tap into this process or not,
Yeah.
it's like we all inherently have this strength in us. And
Mhm.
especially that's what I learned from, like, I feel like the pain that I experienced was to teach me that
Mm.
like you are way stronger, you can handle way more
Yeah.
than like you think you can.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I even like if I hear people's orgasmic birth stories, like everything is just so exciting to me because there's so many different ways that
Yes.
this can all happen and unfold that
Mhm.
yeah, it's just like a never ending like portal that you can go into.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, is there anything else that you want to share on your preconception, pregnancy, postpartum journey? Um, any last pieces, words of wisdom, maybe to give to a first-time mom who's
Mm,
curious about, birth outside the system, because you have such a beautiful confidence. You were so assured of yourself that this is what you were going to do. And then,
mm,
yeah, you didn't waver. You wanted that stress-free pregnancy. You had that very easeful but powerful birth experience. So, yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share about that?
mm. I guess if I think of something to say to first time moms, I think it's again self acceptance.
Mm,
Just learning to trust yourself,
mm,
learning that you are enough right now.
mm,
To you have enough right now to
mm,
be a mother. You don't have to um, like think that you're not perfect enough or that you're not like I don't know calm enough,
mhm,
happy enough, rich enough. That like you are enough
mhm.
and you can do it.
Yeah.
And especially for moms in the US or who grew up in the US, just allowing it to be a lot simpler than
Mhm.
we have been taught to think of it as. Because I think a lot of my experience was colored by living and traveling through Africa and just being able to see like
Mm.
pregnancy as a everyday thing,
Mhm.
breastfeeding as a everyday thing. Like I'd see women breastfeed on the bus,
Mm.
and they'd come out the bus, hand their baby to somebody they don't know, so that they can come down the bus, gather their stuff, and just like seeing the community in
Yeah.
that, and even. there, like when I was living in Gambia, that was the first time I had spoken to a mom. And I asked her about birth. She was like, "Oh yeah, it wasn't bad. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was fun. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like easy." I had never heard that. And even now, just thinking of like my motherhood experience and what I
Mm-hmm.
want motherhood to be, I think a lot about like we are taught the model of the stay-at-home mom. And in my mind, it's a little bit of a scam
Mm-hmm.
because in other places, moms are allowed to like be an outside of the home mom. And by that, I mean like if I have whatever passions I have,
Mm-hmm.
I take my child with me. They
Okay.
now become part of that instead of I have to stay home and kind of be inside and maybe sacrifice certain things that I want to do because maybe they're not in child friendly or baby friendly spaces to
Right.
just challenge ourselves to be like, there's an event I want to go to. Let me bring my kid with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can make an event where everyone can bring their children with them. So even just being more family centered
Yeah.
around the things that I do, because yeah, just really thinking of like motherhood as a part of my path, but not the entirety of who I am,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it's a big part of who I am now and
Mm-hmm.
that I like love the work that comes out of it, but
Mm-hmm.
that I also have other things that I'm passionate about that
Yeah.
I want my children to see me go
Mm-hmm.
after. So
Yes.
that's what I think of in the yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just the motherhood lessons. Yeah.
Yeah, those are amazing. Such wise words. Thank you for sharing those. Yeah, it's true. You've got to, I'm not a mother yet, but yeah, you need to have that space between being a mother and having your own stuff and then also your children. And if you can merge those, that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Thank you.
and if women want to reach out to you to talk to you more personally about maybe your time being pregnant and living in Africa and moving in the different countries that you lived in, or just about your experience using the mushroom medicine in your pregnancy journey, how would they reach out to you and get in contact?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. It's at It's Your Mindset Mama. It's ITSURMINDSET Mama.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much, Aissatou.
Yes,
I said it right. Okay, Aissatou.
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect, perfect.
Thank you. Your story is just so inspirational and it's just like the stories that I need to hear and that other women need to hear about how birth is just simple and normal and it can just be done with you, your partner in the comfort of your home and everything can just be what it is, you just give birth
Hmm.
and then you go on with life.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you so much.
mhm. Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Free Birthing in Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Free Birthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.